Hello, good morning, and welcome to the Talk Football podcast. It is early morning for me, and once again, it's not early morning for him because we're joined all the way from New Zealand by Paul. Good morning, Paul.
Good evening.
And we're going to be talking about the big clubs that are struggling this season. So we're going to kick off with Spurs, as that's Paul's club, and we're going to have a little chat about that. And then we're going to move on and we'll talk about the likes of United and City and the reasons behind why we think those clubs are struggling. So, yeah, let's kick off with you because, again, another poor result the other night.
I don't know where to start, if I'm honest. We've obviously got a hell of an injury crisis, which isn't helping us. But I think we've just got a manager who is either can't change or won't change, and I'm not too sure which one's worse. So if you look at the Forest game, Spence, who was playing right back at the time, for the Forest goal, loses the ball with his back to the Forest goal in the centre forward position, effectively. Forest, 2 or 3 passes, score a goal. And you're thinking to yourself, you've got an 18-year-old midfielder playing at centre half. Why are the fullbacks still doing this inverted number 10 system and structure that Ange is obsessed by? And why are they not just sitting tight to their centre halves and, helping these? Because even Dragusin's only 21 or 22, so it's not like he's, a super experienced centre half.
No,
and it's not like either of them have got and neither of them have got blistering pace. Van der Ven is a cheat code in that sense. He allows you to play the way that Ange wants to play because he's got the pace that can get you out of trouble. But and he just seems to have one way of playing, no tactical flexibility or ability to change. Doesn't seem to realise what he's working with and then work out the best solution for that. We're just going to blindly play the same way we've always played and probably continue to lose.
Yeah, it almost seems like it's like an attitude of cutting your nose off to spite your face now with it, because every he's getting so bitey in every interview. Why am I answering the same questions? Why am I being pestered? It's all like, why are you pestering me? Why are you bothering me? Well, because you're losing. Because
exactly.
What do you expect the journalists? You're playing the same way. Everyone can see what the problem is. Exactly the same, like with what we saw with Southampton, Russell Martin, etc. We can all see the problem, and yet you don't seem willing to want to adapt to that because you think your style and your way of playing overrides getting results. Well, I'm sorry, but no manager's infallible, and you're in a results-driven business, and at some point, as much as Levy will give you the backing or whatever, and the same with any club, at some point, once the fans really turn, and they're going to bite the bullet, and you're going to get the sack.
Well, I think he believes that we continue to do this. The way to play is ingrained, and we'll come out the other side stronger. Probably not this season. He's banking on the fact he'll still be in charge next year, but I just don't see it. I just see someone who's tactically inflexible, and when he comes up against a manager who's got that nous and that tactical flexibility, we'll just always be beat because we've got one way of playing, and everyone knows how to play against us, and everyone knows how to beat us.
Yeah,
and it's quite depressing, to be honest. I mean,
it was left to an untenable phase. It almost gets to that point where, like the point of no return.
Yeah. I reckon we're one or two results away from that if we're not there already. Yeah. We've got the first leg of the League Cup semi-final against Liverpool, and I think his future is probably safe until then, and then depending on
maybe
result,
perhaps we'll make up as well.
Yeah, I think while he's in all 3 cups, then you probably stick with him, with the sheer hope that we can pull one of them out of the bag. But if we lose heavily enough to Liverpool where we feel we're out of the semi-final after the first leg, I think he might be given the elbow then.
Yeah,
But I've got no confidence. We'll have a few players coming back. We need to sign players in January. To be fair to him, he was left massively short with the summer window. It was a really poor summer recruitment window, but he sat in press conferences and said that he signed it off and he supported it, and he signs off every signing. So you can't say that. And
it then falls on his shoulders.
Exactly. So, but yeah, he's going to need to. I don't think any Spurs fan really wants it to fail, because we just.
In an ideal world, the football's pretty. Which most of our clubs, we want to play nice looking football. They pay a lot of money to go to the stadium, and you want to be entertained, and you want to see good football. But equally, it's so depressing if you're turning up every week knowing that he's going to do the same thing, and you're going to get beat, and you're going to get beat. And then obviously, I know we've spoken about it before with Levy, whether he pulls the trigger on the checkbook and it is notoriously difficult to do anything in January, and most clubs will probably look at loans because of FFP restrictions, etc. But
we don't have any FFP issues in the slightest.
No, because of how
revenue of the stadium,
how well run the club is, etc. Yeah,
we could spend 200-300 million in January.
There's no real excuse then not to do it. I mean, other than the fact that you might dent the balance sheet for a year, but you might well put a trophy in the cabinet. You might well get in the top 4 and get a Champions League football, which will bring you even more. Well, no. Well, do you know what I mean? You're not the only club of size that's going to struggle for that, because like I say, we're going to talk about them as well. But there is a few other big clubs, and the other problem is that whilst for me, even in this division now, there's so many other clubs that are spending good money. Not like mad money, but that are starting to acquire really good players, sticking with managers and finding consistency, and then now becoming a threat. Or you only look at the table and you look at like the likes of where Forest are, which former Spurs manager, Newcastle have had a couple of tricky patches where they may have, because of the size of the investment, they may have got a little bit trigger happy with Eddie Howe when they've gone on runs of 4 or 5 games where the results have been bad. But yet again, they're stuck with him, and they've now bounced. And yet again, those teams have invested in some good players, not always with many, many, many zeros after the transfer cost. But, recruitment's been very good. But that's the other thing. I mean, you can throw money at it, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you're actually going to get the right players.
No.
And that feeds into it again.
And I think that's what we're all hoping. We're all hoping that if we stick with him and we'll come out the other side. But I think the number of people that expect that to be the case, as in we expect to come out the other side better than what we are now, is really starting to dwindle. There's a lot of people.
I mean, there's nothing you can do about injuries. Injuries are just 18 months ago, Chelsea, my club, we went for a similar kind of thing where we had so many key players out injured, and it really hurts you, which is why we invested so much in the squad, bringing a lot of young players in. So there's not. I do feel for him a bit, because there's not a lot you can do about that. But then you start looking through the squad. And between a crop of very, very good youngsters and then your top end players at the squad, there's such an age gap. Long term as well, you're looking at like replacing Sonny, because he's 31 now. So there's an issue there.
But it's been the age old time under Levy. It's always planning for a future that never arrives.
Yeah.
And is he signing Archie Gray and Bergvall because he believes in 5 years' time they'll be 2 of the best youngsters in the world and they'll boss the Premier League? Or is he signing them because he can sign Archie Gray for 40 mil, which sounds like a lot of money, but possibly he'll be worth 140 mil in 3 years' time, and then he sells it. And it's probably the latter as opposed to the former, unfortunately.
Whereas where you are now, with what your manager wants to play, you probably need to sign 4 or 5 players at the age of, say, 25 to 27, 28 with experience in a very competitive league. So you're looking really Spanish league, German league, or Premier League. you know, if you're signing outside of that, I think you're taking a bit of a gamble because you don't really know what you're going to get when you're going through Dutch league, Portuguese league, etc. You've got the likes of like Victor Gorgeres, which to me, any big club should be looking at, despite the fact that he was at like Coventry a couple of years ago. He's now tearing it up. But I'd still think that that's a bit of a gamble because, albeit, you know, he's a young player and he's in that sort of like mid-20s range, banging in goals for fun, Champions League, and in the well, not so much actually since Amarin's left, but which is quite a strange one. But yeah, that for me that's still a gamble because there's a player, despite the quality that you might see on TV, and in can he then do that in the Premier League? So that's a gamble and that's a lot of money. But that
but
would fit
we had
your
a
mold
guy
in terms of that Harry Kane mold because he's that kind of player.
I think it's more midfield is our issue. We just do not have a midfield. There's no balance in the midfield in the slightest. Last year we had Højbjerg, who didn't suit the system.
No.
You know, the manager didn't like him, but what he did was a great job. Whereas he came off the bench with 20 minutes to go in a tight game, and he saw the team through to the end. You know,
and he's a 6 or 7 out of 10 every week.
Exactly.
Basumas can do great things, but doesn't, and he loses his head.
He's never a number 6 in a million years. The balance in the team, the balance in the midfield in particular, is shocking.
Yeah, I like Sarr. Sarr's a good player, but yet again, it's just the jigsaw just doesn't work.
He needs players around him. So, but I don't think Ange doesn't see it, or at least he doesn't admit to it.
Yeah.
He's more interested in players that are press resistant as opposed to a midfielder that can tackle. And then going back to Archie Gray again, the hope is that he's the 6. But while he's playing at centre half, because there's no one else to play at centre half, you can't get an opportunity in the
and equally, I mean that's also damaging his confidence because you know, you're playing every week and you're conceding goals, you're getting beat. You know, the blame's getting put towards you. It's got to dent his confidence as a young player as well. That's not really going to do him any favours whatsoever. And we've seen it with young players. If they take that knock early doors, sometimes they don't recover.
Yeah, we need to get him in midfield as soon as possible. But I guess it could be worse. We could be United.
Well, let's move on to them. So we'll talk about the 2 Manchester clubs. We'll start with United because that's an interesting one now. Because obviously the change of manager, and hopefully I'm gonna try and get this evening. I'll try and get my friend Andy, who's a Man United fan, to come on for a chat as well. Because so now we've had so since Moyes, we've had how many managers?
I wouldn't know. I can't think.
Van Gaal, you know, Jose, Ten Hag, obviously. So at what point? Yeah, I mean, you know, Solskjaer. At what point do you say, okay, I think we know it anyway. Everyone knows it. You'd be blind not to know it. The problem's not the manager. You know, clearly that squad of players that's been there, the key part of that squad of players that's been there for the past, say, 5-6 years is not good enough. It's not good enough. And clearly the attitude and the hunger within that dressing room is nowhere near the sort of standards of that, you know, Man United set under Ferguson, for not even so much about the way they play or anything like that. It's about having the passion, the heart to make a 10-yard sprint.
Because when you just said we all know the problems of the manager, I thought you were going to look at the club. I
think in part it is that it's obviously because they've spent an astronomical amount of money. It's not like they've not. People can criticise the Glazers all they like for what they've done with the club in terms of leveraging the debt, you know. But their annual turnover and like the money that moves through the machine that's Manchester United is mental. I mean, it's right up there with all the biggest clubs in the world financially. So that's not an issue. And I think, you know, under Ten Hag, they spent something like 400 odd million. Under Van Gaal, they spent a lot of money when they were bringing in the likes of Di Maria and people like that. You know,
but who's spending the money? I think that's the issue with them. I don't even think it's the players and the playing squad not being that good. It's the structure of the club. You know, they had Fergie, who did it the old school way, didn't he? The Bill Nick way, the Shankly way of one guy who runs everything, who's in charge. And you can't do that these days. And they haven't been able to transition to that kind of, you know, director of football, someone who runs the football operation.
And of course, they've just sacked their director of football.
That's exactly what I was going to say. Yeah. So they spent ages negotiating with Newcastle to get him, paid Newcastle a massive fee, almost to the point of him being a player.
Yeah.
And then he's gone.
But yet again, it goes down to the old adage: is that it's far easier to change one man than it is to change 22. But I mean, I just think there's massive issues there. I mean, like now you've got this whole thing. You've got a new manager that's come in. He's tried to make a stance with one or two of the players, and I think it's backfired. And I almost get to the point where I think maybe already he's probably lost that dressing room.
He might not care because he might feel that by the summer it will be a different dressing room. He's probably had promises that he's going to get 3 or 4 players in.
Yeah,
maybe more, 6 or 7. Sounds like Rashford is off. So there's one.
I mean, that's massive. I mean, to get that off the wage bill, and it's annoying with Rashford because there is a player there. It's whether or not he's one of them ones where if he can get his head straight and get his head in the game, I mean, he's a really good player, and with potential to go to the next level if he can get his own head around the fact of what his talent is, and the right kind of manager to then unlock that talent.
I wonder where he's going to go. Who do you think it's like?
To be honest, mate, I mean, there's probably literally unless they pay a portion of the wages, which is probably going to be likely because I can't see anyone other than maybe PSG or someone in the Saudi league being able to match 350 grand a week. So all the big clubs in Italy, that rules them out. No one there is in a financial position to get anywhere close to that. I don't even see, the top 2 in Spain. They don't need him. They don't need him. Real Madrid have got forwards coming out of their ears: Rodrigo, Mbappe, Vinicius Junior. Bellingham in the 10 and all that. Don't need him. Barcelona don't need him. Pedri, Yamal. Still got Lewandowski playing up front. I'd pick a 38-year-old Lewandowski ahead of Marcus Rashford any day of the week on current form. So where are the options? I mean, PSG are looking to try and offload Kolo Muani, possibly to a club in the Premier League, maybe Arsenal. There's rumours of that. So that kind of then frees up a space there at PSG because he kind of would play off that sort of left wing, left forward side there. But it's whether or not ultimately, if he says, "I'm not going anywhere. I'm on 350 grand a week. I've got a contract. I'm not, I'm quite happy there, and I haven't really got the hunger for it. I'll just sit on the bench." And it's going to have such a negative impact within the dressing room. And then he's picked a fight with Garnacho, who over the past year has probably been one of their most standout, promising youngsters. So he's now have been ostracised from the squad. So I just don't know. I don't know what Man United are.
Well, neither do I think that's the problem.
And the thing is, now in the background, you've now got Ineos and Jim Ratcliffe going, "We're paying far too much in this part of the business, and they're cutting it. They've literally cut the women's team adrift financially, and they've basically said, "You're not our priority. You'll get basic funding. We're not signing anyone. We're not doing this." So the club is such a mess in the background.
Ratcliffe is doing loads of bizarre stuff. You heard the story about the stewards. I think something like at United, if you're a steward for 10 games, you get a bonus.
What's that all about?
And he scrapped it based on the theory of saying we need the money for the first team. It's like I think it's a £50 bonus or something.
Yeah,
it's like
and that just feeds into so much negativity around the club. And this was the guy that's supposed to have come in and been the big saviour, the one that's going to eventually completely oust the Glazers and all that. And sometimes, you know what? Be careful what you wish for. Really, because we've seen it with owners and that. My lot, they've taken 2 years to wrap their heads around what it means and what it requires to become Premier League owners and make it work. Finally, thankfully, they seem to they've got the right sporting directors in that are going to make better footballing decisions in terms of the club. I just don't see that. I mean, he's got Jason Wilcox with him there at United now, who's been there working in the background as one of the advisors and sporting directors alongside with the guy they brought in from Newcastle.
Yeah, Ashworth. Yeah,
Ashworth. Who done wonders. I believe he was at Brighton first, I think that's where he came to prominence. And then obviously then went to Newcastle to help them figure out how they spend the Saudi money and navigate that. And done really well with them, got them to a point where they're now consistently top 6, pushing towards top 4 ambitions. So you bring the guy in, you've barely given him a year, and then you get rid of him. I think they've signed 1 or 2 good players. I like Højlund, but yet again, you're signing potential.
For potential money, though. Would they pay
75 million. Mason Mount, obviously, we robbed them of 65 million. Thank you very much. For a very good player, but one of them kind of players where you don't quite know where to put him. He's not an 8. He ain't a 10. He ain't going to play a 6. He ain't a winger because he ain't quick enough. So he's kind of a bit of a luxury. So again, it doesn't really fit. I thought he might fit the Amorim style from what I saw with Amorim at Porto. He kind of, rather than out and out wingers behind the main striker, he kind of like to play sort of like
2 10s, isn't
it? Tucked in, and then with
he's
2
tried to play him though, hasn't he? He's given him quite a lot of game time.
Yeah, he has given him some, yeah, which is unfortunate for him. As much as a lot of Chelsea fans have a bit of resentment towards Mount and the way it happened and all that, I do like him as a player. He was good for us, and it's easy to forget that he was a very good player for us. And it is a shame, but yeah, I mean, I just don't know where United go. I really don't, and I do think that they are maybe 6 or 7 players away from even getting anywhere near being competitive. And trouble is, and like I said earlier, there's no team standing still, and they're all going to invest. And most clubs have got decent backers now in the Premier League. So yeah.
And I was going to say they might still finish above City. The way City.
And so we'll move on to them, and I mean, what a catastrophic drop off. And I know you, and I do put a lot of this on the Rodri effect, not because of what he does on the pitch. I just think it's not so much what he does as a player, but I think it's what he brings to other players. Because
I've got another theory.
Go on.
I think the Rodri thing is true, but I don't believe that a team of world-class players can fall off a cliff as much just because they lose one. However important he is, and going back to my lot, if you put Rodri in that Spurs team, would be a completely different side because he does everything that a number 6 should do, and we haven't got a player who does that. However, do you think they know the outcome of the hearings and the 100 odd charges?
But you know what?
And they know they're going to lose so many points that they're going to go down.
Maybe, but I don't know, because it all started off. The whole season completely starts off negative because there's this is Pep going to stay? Is he going to go? And then of course players are going to be looking at that going, I'm not sure I'm going to sign a contract because I don't know if he's going to be here. I don't know who's going to come in. I don't know what that looks like for the next, say, if I sign a contract for another 3 years, I don't know what that looks like with another manager. And then you've equally alongside that, you've now got players that are getting old, and they've been amazing for 6 years. By far, City have been the best team in the world for 5 or 6 years. Consistent performers, consistent performances, an amazing motivator of a manager. I think you've always been able defensively. I think you have always been able to actually get at them. I don't think they've ever been brilliant at defending, but they just blow teams away and they control games. And that midfield has had an ability to keep the ball and to stop you hurting that back four and exposing those fragilities. And because if you look at what they've got at the back, even now, despite the fact they're losing, you still got the likes of Gvardiol, who they spent a lot of money on. Walker's still in there, and John Stones. You're not talking about poor players. So the goalkeeper's fallen off the cliff and completely.
Which is why I think it has to be more. It can't just be the loss of one player.
Yeah,
there must be something. I think they know. I think they've been told.
Why, as players, would you potentially, if you're thinking, okay, the club's going to go, surely then you'd be thinking, well, I don't want to. Maybe I want to look at moves and all that. What I wouldn't want to play crap, because for me, I'd be thinking, okay, so if the club's going to go, I still want to play Champions League and Premier League football. I'm going to show up.
They're all good enough individual players. They'll still get the move. I just think that they've been told, because they can't be relegated because the Championship is a different organisation. But they've probably been told you'll be docked enough points to make sure that you go down, basically.
Well, so
they know they can't win the league.
Yeah,
and they know they can't qualify for the Champions League.
I don't think the Premier League is going to kick them out in terms of even. There's no point finding them financially. We know that it's pointless. They're effectively backed by an entire country, so there's no point whatsoever hitting them financially. So yeah, points or being booted out the league is likely.
Yeah, it will be a massive points deduction, which means that they get relegated.
I personally think it's going to be staggered.
I think the club knows.
Yeah, I think it's going to be staggered. But then he comes out in press conference.
In what sense? So like you lose 12 points.
I think or either transfer bans or stuff like that. So maybe they'll say, okay, you're going to start maybe a 60 point deduction, 40 points suspended over 2 years. So maybe they'll start on -20, because I don't think the Premier League are not stupid, and that kind of level of money and publicity brings a lot to the Premier League, and they don't want to piss off the Saudis, because that's where the future of sport money comes from. So, like it or not, talk about sports washing or whatever. But so I think that they're going to go, okay, we're going to hurt you, but we're not going to you're not going to go down. So we're at you with 20 points. So that effectively means you're not going to qualify for the Champions League, potentially, say, for the next 2 seasons. But we're not going to be stupid enough. We're going to put you in a position where you're going out of the division, because we need Manchester City.
We keep you in the division, but we stop you from being competitive at the top of the table for 2 to 3 seasons.
So you're not going to win the title. You're not going to get in top 4.
You lose the money from the Champions League.
Yeah.
But you're still part of that competition.
You're still going to hurt them a little bit financially, but I just don't think. But then if I would say Everton and Nottingham Forest, bearing in mind they only got hit with 1 charge each, I'd be furious, because Everton got docked. I think it was like 12 points reduced to 8. Forest was 6 points reduced to 4 on 1 charge. So for 100, but then. It's different circumstances. These 115 charges are not about FFP. These are about illicit payments to agents on young players and stuff like that, and other financial stuff, dodgy dealings.
That's why I think they'll go, because the other teams will kick up a fuss if they're not fined, or docked enough points that are appropriate based on what the other teams were done. And then you'll have teams like, the other big clubs. So take my, Spurs chairman Levy as an example. He'll use this. He'll make sure that City get punished in a way to kind of, up Spurs by 1 position. You think of Arsenal, who have become second in the league for the last 2 years. They're going to feel done by the fact that they're not the champions, and they're going to want to make sure City are punished. Liverpool, who are rising high at the moment. United, exactly, let's reduce.
Let's face it. Everyone in the league wants probably. I mean, if you actually ask the Premier League chairman, they probably go, fuck it, boot them out. Let's because it benefits them. But I just don't see the Premier League doing it. I really don't. I don't know. It's a difficult one with them.
You have to remember, though, the shape of the Premier League. The Premier League is in effect a membership organisation. So Manchester City are 1 member of 20. So the other 19 do hold quite a bit of power.
Quite a bit of sway. Yeah.
So and I think that's where it's come down to. I think there's a lot of players that even if they don't know, there's uncertainty. And they're like, well, are we going to be docked enough points? Are we going to be in the Champions League? Are we going to be relegated? What does that mean for me? Yeah. And they're just all not pulling in the same direction. They're thinking about.
He has come out in this week and said that they are going into the market in January, which is unusual for them to want to go into the market. And he is targeting defensive cover. I do think he's probably.
But again, going back to your point, is it the last time they can spend?
Maybe, So maybe if he, you know, they look at it, if they can go and sign, say, 3 world-class players, a midfielder, a creative midfielder, and, you know, a very good defender. I know that they're looking at Zubimendi in terms of midfield. He's 25. You know, he's a very, very good player. There's a lot of clubs looking at. I know Liverpool were looking at him. So that he's kind of in that kind of Rodri mold as well, in terms of the style of midfielder. And certainly, obviously, when Rodri would be back, them two as a partnership would on paper would 100% work. So that's a player that would bring some stability to their midfield. Defensively, obviously, he's probably going to go and try and sign the centre half. John Stones is probably the wrong side of 30 now. Ake keeps getting injured. Gvardiol, you know, keeps playing him out of position, playing him in left back roles and stuff like that. But ultimately, you know, he is a centre half. But equally, you know, they've still got a Kanji, still got Gvardiol, and they're both relatively young, mid-20s. So, you know, Diaz has struggled with injuries, but that, again, for me, that is a world-class defender. So they've missed him, but I just think the whole thing falls apart, and the whole way Pep wants to play falls apart because the creative players within that team do not have the base of Rodri. And for me, and even if you go right the way back to and you're talking about the way managers and their stubbornness with like Postecoglou and the stubbornness of the way they want to play, I think Pep falls in that category as well. Despite how great he's been lucky, in my opinion, because he's had world-class players at his disposal for the vast majority of the 3 clubs that he's managed. So at Barcelona, if you'd have taken Busquets out of that team for any kind of, and he was massively consistent in terms of his appearances, but if you'd have taken him out of that Barcelona machine, would Xavi and Iniesta have had that protection and base to be able to go and play and create beautiful things with Messi the way they did? You know, at Bayern Munich, I believe he had Xabi Alonso doing that role. So yet again, his whole team gets built around a central figure that sits in a pocket, that protects everyone, and is the one that springs the patterns of play. And I think if you take that out of a player of that kind of quality, that is so key to the style and the way you play, a bit like with us, I think with us, like at Chelsea. So if we, on current form, if you took Moise Caicedo out of our midfield, and we haven't got Lavia to come in there, Enzo can't do what he does. The forward players, Cole Palmer, they don't get the space, they don't get the protection. The back four, which is shaky as well, doesn't get the protection because they've got someone, and we've seen it before with Kante, Makelele, players like that. These central defensive midfielders are so key to the way you play. And you've been, like I say with Spurs, you've been hurt not having Bentancur to be able to come in there and play, you know, in a position where he can control the game. I just think with the Rodri effect, and I know it's one player, but the Rodri effect stops the midfield being creative. If the midfield's not being creative, they don't feed Haaland. If Haaland's not a very good footballer, he's a great finisher, but if he's not involved in the play 95% of the time, not involved in the tiki-taka passing and all that, and then they've got wingers that are just so inconsistent. Jack Grealish gets the ball on the left, cuts in, passes it sideways 5 yards because he's been told retain possession. Not what we saw at Villa, go at players, attack, you know, get on the ball, make things happen. Not allowed to do that. Foden, because he hasn't got a protection of a good midfielder, has not been able to get into pockets and find space and be creative. He's been terrible this season. So Haaland don't get service. Haaland, you know, and then his confidence gets knocked, misses the penalty, on their draw with Everton. So all these things are snowballing with City, and then you've got all this, like you say, going on in the background. But yeah, I don't know. And then of course you've got Liverpool that seems just kind of going to walk away with it.
Well,
I know we said this. You said this to me in the text, and I've had conversations with other people and fans, etc. And we'll finish off with Liverpool. Are they that good, or is it just that the fact that everyone else is just not very good?
I think everyone's just dropped a level this season, and they're not that great. And this season, not the Liverpool or Leicester, but it reminds me of that 15-16
It's got
season.
That kind of feel to it, hasn't it?
Leicester were there, and and now you've got Arsenal just underneath Liverpool. I don't see Arsenal ever getting close enough, just like Tottenham never got close enough to Leicester to actually challenge and put any pressure on them.
You know,
Liverpool
Arsenal
were just always
as well for probably anywhere between 2 to 3 months, which is him to that side is as key as Odegaard not being there was. But what I will say with Liverpool is that they've been, I would say, like an 80%, an 80% team. So they're not like the Liverpool team that won the title. They're not amazing football. It's not amazing football. They're not blowing everyone away. But I think Slot's come in there and brought a level of calmness, and I think he's got the best out of players that probably weren't, considered by Liverpool fans as first team starters. I'll give gravity again in terms of a midfield as a six that dominates play. So you've had Gravenberch is key to that, because under Klopp he weren't really getting minutes. He was a bit of a bit part player. We saw his potential at Munich and that, but and Ajax before that. Obviously, Slot being a fellow countryman of it, he knows the player, knows what he's capable of, and he's made him key to his team. So you've had that, and then that allows the likes of McAllister to be able to play. And obviously, Salah's been rejuvenated again this season. He's been on fire, especially the last 5 or 6 matches. He's been pretty much unplayable, and it looks likely that him and Van Dijk will probably stay and sign a new contract.
That's what I was going to say. I wonder if this is like the last knockings of a great team or a great squad. In that,
I mean,
maybe Slot said to Van Dijk and Salah, "Give me one more year."
I think it appears that they've really all. I mean, the whole squad's completely bought into what Slot wants to do and the way he wants to play. The play is fairly similar to what they played under Klopp, but not as complete gung-ho. So there's a level of calmness to the way they play. But they've had defeats, Forest beat them, and they're not completely, unbeatable. But it's just whether or not anyone else behind them can amass a level of points that's going to get close to them. I know people were talking up, my club about title, and the manager played it perfectly. He said, "No, we're not title contenders. We're not anywhere near where they are at the moment." Has been proven actually over the last 2 games, and potentially, even 1 or 2 games before that, we'd seen a little bit of a dip. But it's natural with young players to have a dip in it. So Arsenal are really the only team that's probably likely to be able to push, and that. But again, that then depends on whether or not they can get covering in January to make a push for it. Other than that, I mean, on form, the only team that's likely to keep pushing and keep getting results and maybe even end up, mad to say, that could end up even second in the league would be Forest.
Now they'll drop, but you can't question how well they're doing. Yeah,
I don't know if they will, but I think they'll probably go and sign a bit of forward cover. Chris Wood's had a great season, but that's been because they've got a really solid base. I mean, they've got the Brazilian lad at the back. I can't remember his name now. I think it's Murillo. But they've got really good balance and partnerships at the back. A solid back four. Keeper's done brilliant. Midfield is solid as well. They've done really well throughout the team. And then they've brought in Elanga yet again. Elanga, an outcast from Man United, signed for 17 million. Hasn't played every game because he's had a few injuries and knocks here and there, but has had a great impact. Hudson-Odoi, 5 million with 2 million in add-ons from Chelsea, and he's still young. Let's not forget that. It's not talking about a player that's like 29, 30. He's still like 26, 27. So they brought in really good players. I mean, they paid Newcastle, I think, 15 million for Chris Wood, and people laughed at that. But he's a good striker at what he does. He stays within the 18-yard box. He puts a bit of press off the front, and they've just got really good legs, and they've got a bit of depth because obviously they went and signed a lot of players, which got them into trouble financially, obviously. But it meant that they have a base of players and a really good squad to pick from. And I think a great organizer in terms of Nuno. So yeah, Forest have kind of been this season's Villa, if you like. But yeah, again, Villa, that's another team that's inconsistent and struggling. But and most of these are all. I mean, Villa are on the same points as Man City. Having said and what we've said about Man City, it is worth noting that they are only 6 points off the top four. So I think it'd be foolish to completely write off City making the top four, because one or two signings in January could really, really ignite them. And we do see with City is that they do towards the back end of the season, the last 10 games or so, they always seem to kick on and come to life. So I'm not writing them off. I don't obviously they're not going to get anywhere near the title, but I wouldn't write them off making top four. But whether or not they'll be there next season, who knows?
Doesn't another matter.
Yeah, so there we go, mate. We've covered the big clubs struggling.
Cool. We'll catch up in a month and see where we are.
So you got so today we'll get a final little. I know you're not going to get up to watch it, but we'll get a prediction. So you're at home to Wolves. So what you thinking?
I'd take a draw now.
Really?
I just get something out of it. I think we'll lose.
I think you'll lose.
Yeah.
I mean, it's crazy to say it, but I mean, should Wolves turn you over today, they're only going to be, I think it's 6 or 7 points behind you.
Yeah.
So you know, there's a few clubs there that really need to have a little look over the shoulder and go, oh, it's getting a bit close for comfort that behind. Not that I think Southampton or Ipswich are going to get anywhere near close to getting out, but you know, I think Wolves will pick up points. I think Leicester will start picking up points under Van Nistelrooy. So there could be potential that one or two big clubs could get dragged a little bit too close for comfort.
Yep.
So we'll see. We'll see what happens. So yeah, Paul's going to be back within the next few weeks. He's hopefully we're going to try and get Paul on every month. And not just obviously talking about Spurs. So we've talked about other clubs with him today. So that'll be the idea. But we obviously will talk about Spurs, especially because it's always a story. There's always something going on. So yeah. So thank you, mate. Thanks for coming on. I know you'll be off to bed shortly, ready for work tomorrow.
No work. It's holidays now, isn't it?
Oh yeah, you still on holiday mode?
Yeah.
I'm back to work Monday. I'm not looking forward to it. I'm on an early, so yeah, I'll be out trying to get an early night tonight, but it's not likely. But we'll see. But hopefully we'll be back a little bit later on. I'm going to drop him a message and we'll try and get Andy on to get his thoughts on Man United and Amorim. Get him on for a quick chat. And also anyone that gets to watch this back, please go and check out the playlist with the match day vlogs. So I've started this little thing where we're doing little match day vlogs where I've been visiting some non-league clubs. And I'm going to be visiting clubs in, say, League 2 and League 1 as well, coming up in the future. So please go and check those out. And, of course, if you want to get in contact with the show and become a guest, please do so. The links are going to be all in the bios, etc. Find us on the social medias and get in contact and come and have your say about your club or about anything football-related in general. So, yeah, thanks, mate, for joining me. And I'll let you go.
Catch you later.
No worries. We'll see you on the next episode, folks. Thanks for watching, and your continued support is much appreciated. I wish you've all hopefully had a Merry Christmas, and I wish you all a Happy New Year.